Hey, welcome back. It's time for another Daily Prize episode on the Daily Prize podcast, where we talk about how sports and the Christian worldview intersect one another. I'm Kyle. Here's another episode dealing with another Nico, but not the one from Tennessee. We're going to talk about one from the Dallas Mavericks, Nico Harrison. We're going to talk about how, man, some things have gone out about Nico Harrison. As you know, for most of you who've been watching sports in the NBA, which I'll talk about the NBA playoffs later on in my Thursday episode, Nico Harrison was the one that traded Luka Doncic, their prize player, the one that was considered their franchise player, because he wanted a better defense, according to him. He said defense wins championships. So what did he do? He tossed aside him, traded for Anthony Davis, and now it's come back to bite him. And in fact, one of the things that Nico Harris said, he felt like he did not know how much Luka meant to that franchise until he realized the fans' reaction during those games. I don't see how you miss that. Yes, Luka meant a lot. Luka meant a lot because Dirk Nowitzki was your prize guy. He won you an NBA championship. And the whole point was to move on from Dirk because he was starting to get slower in his game, still a good player. Luka Doncic was coming in to be the guy. But he traded him away for Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis, fine player. The only problem is Anthony Davis hasn't played a lot of games near the end of the year. In fact, their playoff stock dropped and they went into the play-in tournament and they lost and they didn't make the overall playoff system. So who's really at fault? Well, according to some, in one article I read through ESPN.com, there was a guy named Casey Smith who was fired in the summer of 2023, who was supposedly very connected with Luka Doncic. He was basically kind of like the health and fitness type, trainer or physical therapist or whatnot for the team, and was a huge deal. How so? Well, he was with the team for over 20 years, nearly 20 years. And in fact, he was with them when they won the NBA championship and was really close to Dirk Nowitzki. Then Doncic joins the organization, and essentially Nico Harrison thought Doncic was just not very motivated, was not a hard worker, and was put off also by his diet and just kind of some of those things. So what does he do in summer 2023? What does Nico do to this Casey Smith guy who's a big deal in the Mavs organization? Well, he fires him. And some people believe, and this is not from the Mavs organization, this is not from Nico himself, but some people believe from a lot of articles that maybe Nico felt threatened as a leader. Maybe he felt like he needed to possibly get rid of him so that Nico could do what Nico wanted to do for the organization. Maybe he felt like Casey Smith was going to be this guy who was going to essentially, build more rapport with Luka than Nico with Luka, and I think he possibly was threatened by that. But ironic enough, that happened where Smith was fired, and in a really rough way too. And in fact, sources say through I looked through ESPN, Yahoo Sports, and several other credible resources said that essentially Casey Smith was fired by Nico Harrison over a video call because Casey Smith was going to see his terminally ill mother. I mean, how cutthroat do you get? So he got fired, Luka gets traded, and now we're here. Now we're here where the Dallas Mavericks fan base feel like they've lost someone who brought them to the NBA Finals a couple of years ago. The Mavs season, ironically, ended 77 days after the trade with who? Number 77, Luka Doncic. How ironic is that? I'm reminded of this in the Christian worldview because a lot of times we as leaders can feel threatened. We can feel threatened when someone seems like they have the upper hand or is liked better. And what I want to encourage us with today is is if you are a leader or you're a boss or you're leading a corporation, don't let pride set in with this fact of feeling threatened. Let that be an opportunity to say, well, this is where I'm weak in this area, and I need someone who's going to strengthen me in this area. I'm not always perfect at this as a student pastor, but one of the things that I try my best to do is if I'm not, like, one of the things I don't like planning in student ministries games. I hate planning games. I like participating in them. I like doing this, but I'm it's not my favorite thing to do, or to plan like the small event type thing. I like the big events, but sometimes planning the small things like a taco party and stuff that's not always my wheelhouse and like. I don't normally like to do that. But what you do is that's a weakness of mine, and you put someone there, and I've been able to do that with some people to say, hey, you're really good at this. Why don't you coordinate this, and I'll help assist you in this. In the Bible, there were many leaders that felt threatened. They were insecure. One of them was King Saul. King Saul was threatened by King David because, David was was smaller than Saul, but yet he was being blessed by God and defeated Goliath when Saul was supposed to be the guy to defeat Goliath, but he didn't do that, and David did. And then David's out there, having all these victories in battle and all these things, and then Saul becomes very insecure and becomes a little delusional in some aspects of just some crazy stuff that he was doing trying to kill David. You can even make the argument that humanity feels threatened by pride and by the greatness of someone else. We can feel that way sometimes. I'm sure even the disciples struggled with that, of saying, hey, we're followers of Jesus. We're supposed to stand, firm. But how many times did they show that they actually struggled with weakness? These guys, these were fishermen, right? They were the ones that were supposed to go out and supposed to catch fish, and they experienced many different types of storms, I'm sure. But it was that storm that scared them to death that Jesus calmed. It was King Herod who, even before Jesus grew into his 30s, felt threatened by a baby about this idea of a Messiah coming, that how could he possibly be greater than me? So therefore he went on this onslaught and massacre to kill, so that this person claiming to be the Messiah would not be an issue. See, here's the reality of all this. We can look at all those situations and say, well, I'm not threatened. I'm not threatened by authority. But here's the deal. We are threatened by authority. We believe that we should be in charge. We believe we should be God. Whether we believe it or not, we have that idea. We believe we should be in control. And when we're not in control, we become angry. We become upset. And I'm guilty of it. That's the reason why Jesus had to go to the cross. Jesus, in his authority, submitted himself to death on a cross. He didn't have to, but he did. And people were threatened by that. People were threatened by Jesus because they had this stability or perceived stability, and Jesus poked holes in that and said, no, you're not stable. You want to have a firm foundation. You want to build your house on the rock. You got to build it on the rock, Jesus. You can't build on sinking sand. And so with this connection, with Nico Harrison, he's going to have to know his people. Excuse me. He's going to have to know what really is the bedrock of this organization moving forward. What do they stand firm on? And he's made a lot of mistakes, but that's not to say it can't change. But I think there's a lot of water under the bridge right now that he's going to have to really account for, unfortunately. And I guess he's got a whole off season to think about that. The thing is, we don't have a whole off season to think about it when it concerns the Christian faith, or when it concerns the Christian faith. We have a limited amount of time. And so if you feel threatened by Jesus, good, you should. But that should not lead you to, like the religious leaders who wanted him dead. We're thankful that he died on the cross, but we're much more thankful that he rose from the grave. And so, yeah, you may have felt threatened, but you know what? It's one of those things where we have to give up our pride and say, you know what? No, he's the one that leads me. He's the one that guides me. He's the one. And that takes humility. And Jesus did that perfectly. We can't do that perfectly, but Jesus did. And that's where we end up on our podcast today. So thank you for joining in on this Daily Prize podcast on the Prize Podcast, where we talk about sports and the Christian worldview intersect one another. Again, want to talk to me? PursueThePrize@gmail.com. Thanks for joining in on this Daily Prize, and we'll see you tomorrow for another episode. Take care.